We are live. Spoilers in this video for the series up to this point. Thoughts, Prime Directives, RoboCop miniseries. So, yes, spoilers, including for the trilogy, and yeah. This is a long video, but there are time codes in different sections in the description box, and since this is made up of episodes, it's going to be by episode titles. I am going off the 6-hour original. I haven't watched the 3-hour fan edit. I'm not currently planning to. Now, I will review the trilogy, but I have it on DVD. I only have this on VHS. Sooner or later, my tapes and VCR will stop working, so I'm favoring VHS for now. I love the original. I remember the second one as being okay, and the third as being terrible. I've never watched the TV series. I probably won't. It has been a while since I watched the films, so if I get details wrong, that's why. And it will probably be a long time before I get to the trilogy, but it's on the list. A long, long, long list. Now, my own quote-unquote film critic rating for this is 5 out of 10, but my personal rating is 7 out of 10. I'm not going to claim that this is, like, the best thing ever, but I do think I find it very compelling. I'm not going to claim that there aren't issues with it, but I do think that most of them are fairly easy to overlook. Yeah, I think that's what I'm gonna leave that at. So, episode 1. Dark Justice. So, just briefly, I'm gonna start with a thing that yeah, something I remembered thinking. This, I watched this years ago. Has it been 10 years? Possibly. One thing I remembered thinking was that I really thought that the guy named Damien was going to be a bigger deal as a villain. Like, Kadig is far bigger threat. I don't know. Maybe by, you know, maybe by the time they got to naming Kadig, they were already really big fans of calling the other guy Damien. I mean, certainly he does some really evil things, but just, yeah, compared to Kadig, it's, yeah. Now, I will grant that the opening news update is somewhat cheesy. I'm not sure if it's intentional or not. Sorry, I should say now I'm getting into the notes I took while watching. And when they talk about Bone Machine on the news, they're also selling an action figure as they're discussing a terrorist. Yeah, it's a good kind of it's very satirical, and it does fit in the world of the certainly the first movie. This kind of thing. I forget if it's in the first or a second movie, but there's this thing where there's like a board game for families, and it's supposed to be that you play, basically you're it's the threat of war between countries, including nuclear war. And yeah, it's supposed to be this, family board game, and you see, like, I don't remember the lines, but yeah, something like, you haven't been to, you haven't gotten rid of your uranium deposits like you said you would. And what is it just called, Nukem? Or am I thinking like the Duke? I'm not entirely sure, but yeah, within this world, yeah, they would be selling an action figure of a terrorist. Now, And according to the text running across the screen, apparently there are checkpoints, and motorists have to present ID at OCP checkpoints. Yeah, it feels very present. Now, let's see. A nice sardonic cut from the news report saying the place is safe. Yeah, to like gunfire on police cars. Yeah. I will grant the maniacal laughter is a bit much, but one of the first things we see from this group is one of them blowing himself up, keeping in mind this came out before 9/11 happened. Let's see. I'm fairly certain it came out. Yeah, it come out in 2000 in at least some places, in 2001 in other places. I'm not entirely sure. Anyway, and she says she won't let them fire a gun, and then Cable comes by with a reality check, and excuse me, Cable is frustrated they don't have lethal bullets. You've got a lot to learn, Cable. That's the way they're running Delta City. Not anymore, and Cable gunned down. Yeah. And RoboCop arrives and recognizes Cable. Just because you have ammunition doesn't mean you can use it, and use a lethal force. And Bone Machine has armor against bullets and shoots RoboCop. He goes flying through the air, and he also shoots the leader of the suicide bombers. And RoboCop shuts down around 10 minutes in, a sober reminder that he's not invulnerable. And I know not everybody's going to agree with me here, but I do think that his basic invulnerability is one of the issues with the character in the movies, and here we in fact have a major villain who's very capable of damaging, as well as himself bulletproof. I'm not gonna. The first movie is amazing, and it's an origin story, and a lot of origin stories don't have a lot of threats against the hero. It's just that he's learning how to do these things. He's learning how to do the things he can do. So if he's constantly being beaten down, there's not really room for him showing learning what he can do. And it does have Ed 209. But Ed 209 is defeated twice. One of them by stairs, and the other, I realize he's being blown up, and that's objectively cool. But it's at the start of the fight. Like, he basically, Ed 209 just barely realized RoboCop was there, and RoboCop blows him up. It's a cool moment. It's an audience cheer kind of moment, but it's not, yeah, and then you have, the guys at the end, the gang members who've got what are they called, Cobra guns or something. They're in real life, those guns are very powerful, but they're sniper rifles. They don't cause explosions, which is why it's so amazing that in blanking on the name, but that game, what's it called? I'm blanking on the name, but it's like a sort of spin-off of that popular series. I can't remember, but Michael Biehn does the voice of the main character, and in that game, Blood Dragon, is that maybe what it's called? In that game, you can get that rifle, and at the start, it's a sniper rifle, but if you if you upgrade it, then it can fire explosive bullets. So there they get both. I really appreciate that. Anyway, let's see, the second one he fights that other cyborg some, but honestly most of what I remember about that cyborg is the whole drug thing, because war on drugs, so every frickin' villain in every movie that comes out of America has to be a drug dealer or some kind of drug. they take apart RoboCop in one scene. I thought that was decent, but then he comes back and he's just like, oh, this. Wait, no, is that before or after? There's some point in that movie where he's like having trouble doing his job because he has all these contradictory, like, and I guess it's kind of it's satirical, it's satire on the whole idea of, they're so out of touch. They don't understand, these corporate guys, they don't understand what it takes to maintain law. But it's just kind of lame and dumb. It's not that funny. But yeah, he fights the other guy, Kane. I want to say his name is. I love the actor. The actor's great. I think I love him in everything he's been in. If or am I thinking of another guy? It's that guy. He's an eight-legged freaks. He's got a bunch of spiders in that movie. I want to say that's the same actor, but I'm not 100% certain. Anyway, I don't even remember their fight. I think that RoboCop has like an assault rifle, and then does someone get shoved down an elevator shaft maybe or something? I don't even remember it. It hasn't. I mean, it's been some years since I watched it, but it's two robots fighting or cyborgs fighting each other. I really should have an easier time remembering. Anyway, yeah, just it's kind of an issue with RoboCop in the movies that he's not. It takes a lot to damage him, and in this miniseries, they have, it's really right at the very start, before we learn almost anything else. We learn that they have this non-lethal bullet thing, and we'll later find out why. And we learn that, the media is saying, oh, it's the safest place on Earth. But the reality is that it's got suicide bombers and terrorists and such. But we've barely learned anything else before we learn that there's at least one villain in this who has armor that means that RoboCop can't hurt him with the regular sidearm he has, and his guns are so powerful that they can damage RoboCop. So right off the bat, I know some people say, oh, they make RoboCop too weak. Well, if he doesn't have any weaknesses, why are we watching? Where's the tension and suspense? And in this, it is like you're faced with this thing of you don't know exactly how he's going to be able to defeat the Bone Machine. And yeah, it's sort of the hook of the show, that the yeah, show, miniseries, whatever, that, yeah, RoboCop might actually, and see that the thing is, I already mentioned that my tapes are not going to last forever. I already started running into that because I was not able to watch the last 15 minutes of this, of the final episode. So I'm not 100% sure, but as far as I could tell, RoboCop dies at the end. The tape cut out not very long after that, so I don't know for sure if he was brought back. But he was stabbed in the back of the head with that, big sharp, computer interface thing by RoboCable. And I mean, that's pretty ballsy. They actually kill off RoboCop, in addition to saying that the second and third movie didn't happen. So right off the bat, they've cut off people who want a follow-up to the second and third movie. And at the end, they, obviously, we haven't had one yet, but in 2014 they made the remake. I might watch that. I don't currently have a copy of it. I might watch it when I do videos, and do a video on it when I do a video on the trilogy. Anyway, let's see. Where was I? Right, we haven't gotten a follow-up to either the. Well, I don't know. Did the TV series maybe follow the third movie? Anyway, whatever. I'm just gonna go with the TV series was a follow-up to the third movie. We haven't gotten a follow-up to the TV series, and we haven't gotten a follow-up to this miniseries. You know, as far as I understand, the 2014 movie wasn't well received enough that it might be a while before we get an actual, what's the, yeah, a sequel, another entry in the franchise. So there's some chance that they're, you know, they have three different options there of what to follow up on. So, but yeah, you know, if they actually killed off RoboCop and RoboCable, you know, that's a pretty ballsy thing to do. I really thought that was a yeah. Excuse me. Oh, right. You know what? Let me real quick. I'll be right back. There we go. So, yeah, you know, and I do also think that it's, you know, if you're going to kill off the main character, you have to have told a big story. You know, if it's something like this. And I feel like they did a good job of that. The Yeah. So that yeah, going back to the notes. If you got it from OCP, okay, so that obviously that's not subtle at all, but it still is important to, you know, it's an important point. It's important to point out the problem of monopolies now, and the computer will monitor the work of the people within, much like Amazon does right now. You know, it's always, that's one of the strengths of the first movie, is how much it actually predicted. You know, I don't remember exactly. I looked at Wikipedia and it didn't say. I don't remember if we're told when that movie is set, but you know, 32 years later, and a lot of that stuff has actually turned out to be true. And I'm not going to talk about that in this video. I'm probably going to talk about it in the video I do on that movie. You know, in part because then I will have very recently watched that movie. Again, it's been years since I watched the trilogy last. So, what was the? Let me think. Let me think. Oh, right. One of the strengths of the original movie is all the stuff that it predicted, all the things that it, yeah, it saw these things coming and called them out in this movie. And you know, we're living in that, we're living in that horrible timeline where the warnings were not heeded, you know. But this show also managed to predict, you know, yeah, that, you know, back in 2000, 2001, there was nothing quite that, you know, the monitoring the work within the, like that, excuse me, that was not something that any business practiced. And today, yeah, Amazon does it, and you know, maybe if there be like legislation or lawsuits or something, they'll stop. But currently they are doing it, and there's no like hint of remorse. You know, people are like, you know, you're just jealous of, you know, the people who made Amazon, other rich people. No, it's just that we have basic human empathy, and we find it disgusting how badly they treat the people. You know, there's that thing, they used to say that power corrupts, and then I recently watched, was it maybe Brows Held High or something, said power doesn't corrupt, it reveals. Oh wait, was that Lindsay Ellis talking about? Game of Thrones. Anyway, power doesn't corrupt. It reveals, yeah, power has revealed how vicious these CEOs are, how badly they will treat the people working for them because nobody is forcing them to treat them better. Now, and let's see, Asian man's fast results. And RoboCop talks to the woman taking care of him, expresses ennui, I think is how it's pronounced. Which is also, I mean, I guess I could see, I forget if that was actually something I did read about, but I could understand if people watched this and felt like RoboCop is too sad too much of the time, maybe. And there are sometimes that's the thing that happens with miniseries. They play the same note too many times and or for too long, or they spend too long on one overall idea. I suppose I could see like saying, too much of the time. I personally disagree, but I do think it is maybe, maybe they didn't completely have enough material for a full 6 hours, so some of it they had to stretch out more. Yeah. And Low pressures Ed, and Ed tells Low Saint has to learn. And James receives a private message. It says, from a friend. He tries to trace it and it fails. So, RoboCop's son and Cable's ex-wife are both OCP executives, and they discuss careers and talk about whether to interfere if they disagree with what OCP is doing, which again, that wasn't, like, there was some conflict between some of the, were they executives in the first, I'm not 100%, I think they were, yeah, at least certain, I'm gonna go with executives. Let's see, Bob Morton and, I'm sorry, Ronnie Cox, I want to say is the actor's name at least. There's some conflict there. Ronnie Cox wants to focus on Edge 09. Bob Morton is working on RoboCop. This whole thing. So yeah, it's there was some conflict between them, but there wasn't really, like, yeah, there at the end, Ronnie Cox wants to escape, so he takes, did they just call him the old man? I forget. I'm gonna go with the old man. He takes him hostage and says, you gotta let me out of here. And, old man fires Ronnie, and RoboCop's like, thank you, and shoots him because the fourth directive prevented him from killing OCP executives. Was it OCP personnel in general? I don't remember. So, that was the closest they really came to being, and it was really just, it shows that he really does not have any boundaries. He's willing to commit violence against anyone. He doesn't even respect his boss. But in this, they straight up, again, this is very early in the first episode, they have executives talk about whether, whether to go against the rest of OCP if they don't think that they're doing the smart thing. And this is a thing that happens, power struggles happen in big, corporations and yeah, big groups in general. Now, and RoboCop scans the recording made Bone Machine's weapon and determines it's from OCP, which is again a great little, oh yeah, maybe also part of the hook, and that's again like this is, and this happened before the I mean, you could say that 9/11 and really, it's just, yeah, in general, Al Qaeda, this whole thing was in part that, American, you know, yeah, there have been there's been American foreign policy. Let's go with that, where they gave weapons to someone that they, at least at the time, considered basically on the same side. But then after a while, they were no longer aligned with America, and in general, it was always silly to think that it was going to be. I'm not saying that they should have predicted the fall of the Soviet Union, because nobody outside the Soviet Union knew how bad things were. That was something that people realized once it fell. Nobody expected it to fall when it did, but it was still very short-sighted to give weapons to someone who clearly did not share America's ideals. I mean, we're not talking about, oh, they sold some weapons to to Britain, Great Britain, No, they put weapons in the hands of, extreme, Muslim extremists. These were like, yeah, literally everyone who cared to check knew that the people, the Afghani people who were given weapons were not, they did not think that, the American democracy model was the way to go. So, of course, they were eventually going to turn those guns on America. And, yeah, again, it's possible that, yeah, it probably happened before. So I'm not sure that this show predicted that sort of thing would happen. But yeah, they actually, the bad guy and the good guy have both, they got their weapons from the same place, and I mean, I will say, ultimately, it is in part also that Sarah has goals. She didn't just sell weapons to Bone Machine because he paid well. She was using Bone Machine to make it appear that Delta City would not be, that let me think. There are a lot of plot lines in this show, and I basically watched 45 minutes per day over the last, 8 days or so. Let me think. She was going to discredit the idea that Delta City could be safe with a non-lethal, with where the cops only have tasers. Obviously, Bone Machine makes that sort of thing impossible. She was gonna use that to, yeah, basically a coup. Yeah, and then ultimately that was resolved when Damien killed the CEO and all the other board members, and became the new CEO, and made these other executives board members. Then she no longer needed to prove that. And yeah, even, at that time, RoboCable was still under her control, I think. Anyway, yeah, that is, and that, let me think. I want to say, hasn't that sort of thing also happened? Has the U.S. given weapons to someone they shouldn't, and then turned around and said, "See, well, yeah, some of, let me think. It's been so long since I didn't think to write this stuff down, so I could have researched it more. But I feel like at least once America has given weapons to a country that did not share its values, and then later turned around and said, see, they have weapons, we have to fight them. So again, it's a very, and that's the sort of frustrating thing about when you see people's reviews of this, that they're like, oh, look at the effects, oh, look at, just, people who whine about, oh, the visuals aren't the best, you're the kind of people who are the reason why we're not going to get another great Thief game. And I mean, okay, maybe we're finally going to get System Shock 3, but this whole Bioshock, sorry, System Shock 2 and Thief 1 and 2 were given negative reviews because the graphics weren't completely top of the line. And because of that, they ended up having to sell off a bunch of the rights, and now it's incredibly difficult to get into a position where you can make a sequel to the rights have been such. Just think before you whine about the visuals of something. I don't. I read a bunch of reviews for this before doing this review and the vlog, and I'm not sure I saw anyone talk about the messages of this. They're all just talking about the effects and the acting. Look, those are important parts, but this clearly had some things to say. No, I'm not going there. I'm not going there because that's... Excuse me. This actually does have violence and satire, which are some of the most important parts of the first one. And just, yeah. And I'm sorry, you can't possibly have been surprised that something that was made for TV doesn't have as strong visuals as a Paul Verhoeven movie from the 80s or 90s. You seriously can't possibly be surprised. Is this the first thing, is the first time you watch anything that's made for TV and compared it to something that was like a movie that was made? Paul Verhoeven, I'm not sure he's particularly anymore, but in the 80s and 90s, he was incredible at putting visuals on screen that were convincing and stuff you hadn't really seen anywhere else. Of course they're not going to be able to match that. Like, if you don't want to watch it, that's fine, but don't watch it and then say, I went into this with completely wrong expectations and I was disappointed. Just, like, if you buy, like, a knockoff brand of ice cream, don't complain that it's not like Ben and Jerry's or something. I don't know. Is Ben and Jerry's any good? I don't really eat. I don't tend to buy desserts that have like a brand or a name on them because they're more expensive, and I don't care if it doesn't taste as good. I don't like wasting money. Anyway, yeah, it's really frustrating that people, and then you see people praising things that, okay, they look good, but they have nothing to say, or their message is incredibly hateful. This, like the first movie, has some important things to say. The first movie sets up that OCP has an insane amount of control over what happens here, which today, yeah, a lot of corporations, a lot of privately owned businesses do have an insane amount of power. You know, these are not, they weren't elected by the people. Nobody had a say in who was going to do this, and they can't be held accountable by the people. Think about how insane that is, that, in America today, and other countries, you actually have people who were never elected having substantial power. That's anti-democratic. That's incredibly nasty. And the first movie and this show talk about that. And then, you have movies doing well that are just like, look at how awful this group of minorities are. Look at how destructive they are. instead of pointing the finger at the people actually responsible. I don't do negative vlogs anymore. I'm gonna get back to, okay, so the point is, Sarah is getting people killed just so that she can get more power. And yeah, I mean, there are people, in corporations, just so they can save a little bit of money or so that they can get more power, they're willing to sacrifice other people. There are a lot of judges and lawyers and such who knowingly, greatly, make sure that to give extreme sentences to people who were not, you know, yeah, who don't deserve anywhere near that kind of sentence, just so they can point to it later say, see, I'm tough on crime. You should give me more power. And currently people are dying in, detention centers for immigrants. And that's not, basically the way I see it, you should self-defense, to defend yourself or defend someone else, is the only way it's ever okay to use any violence, much less to actually kill someone. If you kill someone, it had better be because they were gonna kill you if you didn't. Anything else is unacceptable, in my opinion. In my opinion, that's the ethical stance. And yeah, like, I forget which it was, but there was one. Was that Bill Clinton actually who, Lindsay Ellis pointed out in her review of the Reality Bites, I want to say it is, like, P.S. we all miss Bill Clinton apparently, and like, it is this kind of weird. Anyway, wasn't he the one who made sure to make sure that this guy got executed, who, I think he was a killer, but he was like mentally underdeveloped or something, so he didn't have a full grasp of what he was doing. And yeah, I'm gonna go with that. I think Bill Clinton was the one who made sure to have him executed, so that, oh yeah, sorry, I said killed before. Sorry, executed. That's the way we. That's then suddenly it's okay to kill someone. It's not. It's legal. People will show up to watch. He made sure to have this guy executed so that the Republicans wouldn't say that he was soft on crime. That's despicable. So yeah, and really, if, excuse me, I'm not sure I've heard of a single CEO being responsible for. Let me think. Well, yeah, I mean, there was that one guy who would have frozen to death, and they said he should have, and there was that lawyer who said, I agree with them, he should have just frozen to death so that it wouldn't, I'm having trouble remembering. I'm not sure that anyone in America has died directly because of a corporation's rules, but I'm fairly certain it's happened in other countries. When they outsource, there was that, was it a Latin American country maybe, where they didn't have proper fire exits, so they burned to death, and then Fox News comes on and says, they definitely appreciate having a job. I think they would have appreciated being alive. I'm not in favor of just, I think someone who goes on TV, who knows they have an audience, and says something like that, all I'm saying is, maybe they should, like, just, I'm not saying, like, just, let's see, if there was like a simulation kind of thing where, and I'm not saying like trick them, I'm saying they know that it's just a simulation, but before they go on air and say something like that, they have to, you know, experience a simulation of what it feels like to burn to death, just for like seconds or something, and just and not in a way that actually hurts them, but just something that hints at what that feels like before they go on TV and say that people who burn to death just, yeah. So the, what the show, like the first movie, it's not that far-fetched, now. So yeah, back to my prepared notes. We see more of the flashback of when Cable was a hostage. Murphy had to make the decision. I forget, I want to say that at least one person said that it cut to that too many times. Maybe, yeah. I could kind of see that. And certainly, I don't think it was too bad once we got the full context. Excuse me. The, but the, yeah, let me think. We saw it a bunch of times before then, and yeah, it's maybe this, well, yeah, maybe in, like the RoboCop expressing ennui and such. As a miniseries, they did have to survive past ad breaks, so they had to make sure that every so often something happened that would make you come back after the ad break. And again, that's not something theatrical movies have to deal with. Theatrical movies have an expectation that you're gonna sit through the whole thing. So yeah, I don't think it fares particularly badly. I mean, I think that something like Lost, people are like, oh, it keeps surprising me. It's not that difficult to surprise people. That's just doing something that subverts expectations. I think that show was really bad in doing, like, ooh, better stay around during the ad break. You don't want to miss what happens next. And people were like, oh, I can't believe it. Just all they did was bring up something new. I mean, I guess you could say that it's difficult to keep coming up with new stuff and to make it all happen in the same world. But then after a while, part of what they did was chase around a million different plot threads. Like, of course you're going to watch the show when it promises time travel, teleport. It promised a million different things. So, of course, you're going to watch the next episode. You're going to watch past the ad break just in case the thing that you're hoping happens. It's cheating. It's cheating. Anybody can throw a million things at the wall and just, and that's not something this miniseries does. This miniseries has a few very specific plot threads that all end up converging. By the end of the final episode, all of these plot threads have converged. Nothing was completely dropped. And the I don't know, personally I found the conclusion to be satisfying. Excuse me. And again, I say that as someone who hasn't watched the last 15 minutes of it, except for maybe 10 years ago or something. So yeah, it's let me think. And I did check YouTube just in case the last 15 minutes were there, but I couldn't find them. Let me think. Yeah, the no plot thread is completely abandoned. Even when Bone Machine is killed off, Sarah doesn't take that as, she just says, fine, we'll turn my ex-husband into a cyborg. And that'll be the new, just, yeah. I'm not going to claim that I love all of the writing. I certainly do think that I'm going to get more into that later, but the thing with Sarah describing the abortion, just, that was really gross. But it was really misogynistic. Is the but yeah, this show, yeah, sometimes to get you to stay through the ad break, it would bring up something that, you know, yeah, something that we've maybe seen at least some of before, or follow up on something or the like. But at least it all does end up going together, you know. I mean, by now I guess it has been a little while since I last watched Lost. I forget exactly when it was. I don't know. Has it been a year by now? But honestly, I felt that way right from the start of watching. I was like, I mean, okay, it's attention grabby, but that's not difficult. Like, I'd seen so many much better TV shows, shows that depended on getting the audience properly invested instead of just like dropping a bombshell and then saying you're gonna have to wait through the ads if you want to see. Anyway, did I already? Yeah, yeah. And RoboCop went to Cable because he trusts him to find the cop behind Bone Machine's mask, and he doesn't know what other cops can be trusted. And Cable looks up, is that Bone Machine? Oh, on the computer and finds that there's some, or wait, Alex Murphy maybe. I'm, uh, I'm not entirely sure. Finds there's something under restricted information that can't access. And flashback, we're told Cable, what does that say? Got divorced, I guess. Yeah. And Cable is badass, and has depth. See, my mind went to depth before I got done saying badass. Honestly, and again, people are going to disagree with me on this. Excuse me. I think the character of Cable alone is worth watching this miniseries for. I think he's worth all 6 hours of it because he's just so compelling. And I really do appreciate that. Like, Alex Murphy was kind of cool, and he'd do some things that weren't quite regulation, you know. But before becoming RoboCop, he wasn't that like huge of like a badass. Cable is a badass right from the start, and he becomes even more badass when he becomes RoboCable. RoboCop. I don't know. I mean, I guess maybe by '87 standards he was sufficiently badass, but by 2000 standards, not quite. And RoboCable is, and that's another thing. I really appreciate that he's not just like a replacement RoboCop. RoboCop in this is a natural evolution of what he was in the first movie. So, so we have that. So we have that, proper sequel kind of thing, really respectful of the original. And then you also have RoboCable, who's this much more unpredictable kind of, you know, they could very easily have had only one of the two. They could have turned RoboCop into RoboCable, into what they do with RoboCable, or they could have had RoboCable kill RoboCop early on or something. But instead, they actually do have both, and just this miniseries does not get as much respect as it deserves. And yeah, we get the flashbang, find this dog eating human flesh, and we never even actually do see the dog, do we? But I mean, we don't need to. And the thing with the the important part is that they realize the dog is eating human flesh. Yeah, and we see the very creepy basement, and the guy in the house had kidnapped a woman, put her in like a freezer, refrigerator, or something. You could not pay me enough for me to actually let someone close like a freezer or refrigerator with me inside. No way. No, just no. Not under any circumstances. So that woman, that is dedication. I'm pretty sure there's at least one shot where they open it and she pops out without it cutting between shots. Anyway, and this whole bit with the man feeding people to his dog, both cops going through the house, is very tense and suspenseful. And Cable killed the kidnapper. If you want to hate this miniseries, you're free to hate this miniseries. But you can't possibly claim that there's nothing dramatic or interesting in it at all, even if you think it's poorly handled. The show has Cable kill criminals, even though that's clearly considered unacceptable. You know, let's see, did he do it at the start, or did he only try to, and then he didn't have lethal bullets? But he certainly did it here. And, you know, Alex is like, I don't approve of what you did, but I'm not going to tell, you know, I'll, you know, support your lie, and I'll stand, you know, you're going to get a medal for, you know, even though you executed him, you know, you went Judge Dredd on him. And yeah, you know, it sets up, you understand, and that's, I feel like Alex, the way he's depicted in these flashbacks, is very true to how he's depicted in the first movie. And Cable, yeah, you realize that he is willing to do things that others think are unacceptable. And Sarah tells James that OCP has lost their way, losing ground because they didn't change to save times. Again, you gotta admit, this is different from the movies. It's a new story instead of just doing the same thing as we've seen. It's a new, excuse me, it's a new status quo right from the get-go. Welcome to the trust. Excuse me. Yeah, you know, the straight up like group of, you know, OCP executives that work together to fight. Just, yeah, that's a, you know, in the movies, they're there, and there are, you know, the executives are there, and there are a couple of them who get in conflict with each other. Again, Bob Morton and Ronny Cox. But other than that, that's about it. And this is also a story that you couldn't tell in a 90-minute movie that also needs to have a lot of RoboCop. You know, that's something that I really, this has stories that you could not tell in a single RoboCop movie. You know, really each of the stories is something you couldn't tell in, you know, any of the 90, you know, this is made up of 4 90-minute movies. None of the 90-minute ones are an entire story by itself, you know. And again, they managed to wrap all of it up in the, yeah, at in the ending of the first of the final one, sorry. Yeah. And Cable uses computer to further research Bone Machine's weapons. Okay, considering the runtime, it's maybe a little much to have 2 scenes of Cable researching something on a computer and then running into needing security clearance to get more information. I feel like this could have, ultimately you could have combined the 2 and just had, like, yeah, because the first one he's researching Alex Murphy. I'm not entirely sure why. He wasn't the one thinking back to the hostage situation, right? That was still RoboCop, I'm pretty sure. Yeah, because you see they have that effect of RoboCop's vision through the helmet, I think. Anyway, and then, you know, he researches Bone Machine because that's what RoboCop asked him to do. It could have been the same scene. I'll grant that. And what's that say? James and Cable talk about whether RoboCop is difficult or Alex is difficult. I'm not entirely sure. Let's see. So yeah, in this, people don't know that RoboCop is Alex Murphy. That's something the second movie reveals, at least to Alex's wife, very early. And yeah, you know, you have some interesting, like, yeah, when Cable realizes that RoboCop is Alex, and when James realizes that RoboCop is Alex, you know, you have some very interesting, yeah, you know, I think the scene in the second movie is fine, but ignoring the second movie so that you could have this is so much more, this is so much more compelling to me than the second movie. I'm not going to claim that, like, the second movie definitely has some visuals that this can't quite compete with. Among other things, I am never gonna, I'll never get completely out of my mind the sequence where we see the failing new RoboCops. You know, that's also something that, you know, the moment I watched, you know, that when I saw that scene in Iron Man 2, I knew, oh, this is definitely referencing RoboCop 2, you know. That's, yeah, there's some real existential dread and true horror, and you know, let's see if I can remember. Doesn't one of them like take a few steps and then like try to lift the helmet off its head and then give out this horrifying, blood-curdling scream, like some kind of eldritch abomination or someone witnessing an eldritch abomination, and just yeah, there's some yeah, and like one of them is like shoots itself to end its misery, and I'm not saying that this show can quite compete with that, but on the whole, I really don't consider the second one that like it's a sequel. You know, what's that line in Scream 2? By definition, they're inferior films. You know, and just yeah. Anyway, the you know, when you first, yeah, James finds out that RoboCop is his father, and then he still goes ahead and gets rid of the RoboCop, you know, and the woman says, "How can you do this?" And does she say he's your father or something? And he's like, "I know," something like that. And then later we do realize he had a plan. He was pretending to go along with that, but he wasn't actually. Or wait, or was it that he genuinely was willing to sacrifice even his father, and then his father manages to talk him back out of it? See, again, I'm sorry. 6 hours in 8 days is a lot for me to remember all the details of, but I think there are a lot of great plot twists. Is basically what I'm getting at. And RoboCop discusses with the woman taking care of him whether or not to tell James, and he sits in the dark alone. I'm sorry, that scene was very like, I don't understand how you can watch that and not feel anything. Just that was really devastating. Like he just, yeah, that's how it is for him. And Cable talks to Sarah about Bone Machine's weapons. Number one banana. Is that like the Canadian version of head honcho or something? I'm not sure I've ever heard anyone use that phrase outside of this miniseries or I guess a kindergarten. Number one banana? Seriously. I'm, I'm, I'm not trying to disparage on Canadians. Sorry. I'm not saying that's a bad thing. I'm saying, is that a Canadian phrase? And that's why I don't recognize it, is basically what I'm saying. I'm way more familiar with American media than Canadian. I have absolutely, there are some amazing things that have come out of Canada. I'm fairly certain that David Cronenberg is Canadian. And I mean, just him alone, I don't understand how you can hate a country that has given us David Cronenberg. Or think less of a country. And I think that also kind of, you know, oh, they're all super polite, yeah, and then one of them puts images in your head that you will never get back out of there. You know, just, but he does appear to be a really nice guy. I'm not sure I've ever heard anyone say that, he's really, you know, like there are directors who are difficult to work with. I'm not sure I've ever heard anyone say that about Cronenberg, but He sure does. Some absolutely horrifying images. And Damien says he has to be paranoid or he'll end up stabbed in the back. And he says a dozen knives, which I guess might be a reference to Caesar. It's interesting that he would compare himself or other executives to Caesar, who specifically was someone who went out of line, and the assassination, you might think it was harsh, but it's not just that they didn't like his haircut or something. He was a man who was given a lot of power, refused to give it back when he was supposed to. So that's a very interesting parallel to these OCP executives. Again, look, if you want to say, oh, there's only really like 10 minutes of really good stuff in this, fine, say that. But don't pretend that there's nothing. You're full of crap if you say that there's nothing of value in this. Anyway, yeah, on some days it's harder than others to not start ranting like I used to. But I'm not going back to that. Excuse me. And it is actually also at the end he wasn't quite paranoid enough. He trusted Saint too much, and he trusted Sarah too much. Sarah pushed him down the elevator shaft, and Saint cut him apart with lasers, you know. And that is, you know, there's what's the, you know, it's not saying that you should be paranoid, but it is saying there are some, in certain circumstances, you shouldn't trust, you know, yeah, never trust Sarah Cable. And, you know, he should have listened to Ed, basically, when it comes to Saint. And the woman taking care of RoboCop catches someone coming out of his room, but she can't quite catch up to him before he leaves, and, you know, he locks the door behind him. And RoboCop notes that none of his systems were damaged, but we do see that he's now got a fourth directive, which is to terminate Cable. And then, yeah, like, it actually, the let me think. I'm trying to figure out, well, this was the time when he couldn't, like, later in this miniseries, he does go against what he's being told to do. But at this point in the miniseries, he does, yeah, I mean, it's sort of the reversal of in the first movie. He tries, he wants to shoot Ronnie Cox, but he can't because of the fourth directive. In this, he doesn't want to shoot Cable, but he has to because of the fourth directive. And it is, you know, it's one of, like, countless. I know, for some reason, no one has been able to count them. References this makes to the first movie. You know, quotes, situations, maneuvers, yeah. And yeah, here I know that I forget about in the later episodes, but so far I really don't see any reason to not be incredibly engaged with the plot and its developments. I don't think I ever really lost interest. And again, you know, I knew a lot of what was coming because I watched it before. And more satire on the billboards, again, not necessarily subtle. And I think I knew that a lot of people didn't rate it very highly when I watched it 10 years ago. And tension as RoboCop gets increasingly close to Cable. Again, I feel like I didn't see very many other reviews pointing out how tense and suspenseful the show could be. And Cable realizes it's Alex, and realizing he can't outrun RoboCop, tries to appeal to him. It's another one of those scenes where you could say, that's not very, you know, he's gonna get shot by he's gonna get attacked by the other guy. Yeah, but it goes to character. I can't say what else I'm referring to without spoiling those. Yeah, I'm not gonna risk spoiling those because those are amazing movies. But yeah, he takes one bullet, and then instead of trying to continue to like crawl along and hope that RoboCop doesn't shoot him, he instead like drops down to where RoboCop is and then appeals to him instead, because obviously he wouldn't be able to outrun him. And there's a conflict between the directives. The you know the fourth one is in conflict with, I guess, all the other three. Yeah, and you know, and he has trouble determining what to do. Let's see. And the news claim that Cable is actually Bone Machine, since taking him out will stop him looking into Bone Machine. And it wasn't enough to send only RoboCop after him. Again, it's such a the thing with, you know, yeah, Sarah found out that Cable, I guess she found out by him going directly to her. So it's again this misogynistic thing of, men trusting women and then the women using that trust to destroy the men is really, really gross. But yeah, and the again, in real life, it doesn't tend to, a lot of, there are not a lot of American executives who have intentionally gotten American citizens in America killed. But they have, if someone, tries to, what's it called? Tries to inform other people of bad business practices, they do get blacklisted or whatever it's called. And the scrolling text at the bottom during the news urges people to bring guns, but also body armor. And let's see, and like there's going to be tons of medical teams are standing by for some kind of event. Man, I wish it didn't ring so true to today in America. And again, back in 2000, people were way less. I guess they did also happen much less. But today there are tons of gun massacres. And yeah, the no fatality and Bone Machine combination is Sarah's attempt at coup. And Damien wants to be part of the coup. And Damien has footage of Sarah and her ex meeting. Let's see. And yeah, Sarah and or the Trust are who programmed the Directive 4 into RoboCop. And Sarah meets with Bone Machine, sends him after RoboCop and Cable, so he can have Cable's job. And it's again this thing of, disgruntled former employee, which I guess is a reference to that one guy in the first movie who wants like an expensive sports car, and then RoboCop like punches through the wall and just drags him out, which is also something referenced in Iron Man. Anyway, in that case, Iron Man 1, not Iron Man 2. So yeah, actually, yeah, there's an Iron Man 1 references RoboCop 1, Iron Man 2 references RoboCop 2. Anyway. And Alex doesn't think Cable should have, the medal. But he does lie for him, and Cable believes the kidnapper would have walked, which is entirely possible since they went into the property without probable cause. All they were there for was the dog. Let's see. And them finding a kidnapped woman being threatened by the guy might not be enough. And where Alex does believe it should be done by the law, Cable is more concerned with whether criminals go free. It's a compelling conflict. And again, it's, some of the time they work together, some of the time they fight, but there's always that conflict that Cable is just willing to go further. That, ultimately, yeah, RoboCop is not willing to go as far. And great ominous lighting and music as RoboCop enters the building. And audio flashbacks as RoboCop approaches Cable, of course, who of course has trouble getting far away from him with that leg wound. And Cable appeals to Alex. I don't want to die at the hands of a machine, so you make sure it's a man that does the killing. You owe me that much. Bone Machine, Cable, and RoboCop fight. I really love that Cable has a gun in each hand like Alex does in the first RoboCop movie, but then never again, if I recall correctly. Just, yeah, you know, yeah, I'm not going there. Let's see. And RoboCop is in the same situation as Alex was with Cable and the Kidnapper. And RoboCop kills Cable, the bullet easily piercing the armored vest. And RoboCop continues shooting Bone Machine, and he stabs him to death, and then Cable dies right in front of him. And the news report that Cable and Bone Machine, the deaths of, they already have what appears to be a documentary ready, and they're selling stuff from his death. And someone sends a message to James about his father's death. RoboCop's clearly haunted by the death of Cable. And Sarah tells them to make Cable into a cyborg. We get the POV shot like in the first movie. And both the opening and the closing of this episode are very striking, really grab your attention, make you keep watching for what's next, whether it's the rest of the episode or the next episode. We understand the relationship between Cable and Alex. We understand who Cable is, though he wasn't in the films, which is explained. He didn't transfer when Alex did. And now we're teased that we'll see Cable as a cyborg. I was absolutely hooked. Let's see, because what happened between Alex and Cable were some of the last things that happened before he transferred, let's see, to Old Detroit, I want to say it was, and that's what we see in RoboCop 1. At the very start of the movie, Alex Murphy has just transferred, and Cable did not. So there's no, like, that's something that you sometimes see when, you know, it is kind of a retcon. It's something we didn't know about before, but it's an acceptable retcon because, you know, yeah, why would we have seen it before? There wasn't really any, you know, Cable wasn't part of the police in the new place, and I mean, why would Alex have, like, talked about Cable to Anne Lewis? You know, so yeah. Let's see, and you know, yeah, some retcons. I mean, I love Sarah Connor. The Sarah Connor Chronicles. I'm not going to claim that some of the retcons are really kind of like, it's like, how could this stuff possibly not have come up before? And I don't feel like this really does that. Oh boy. That was just one episode, and that was an hour, and I hope I'm not going to end up spending this long on each episode, because this is going to be a long-ass video if I do. Meltdown. And the supposed expert simply says, RoboCop isn't human, so that standard doesn't apply. You know, just because he looks like a robot. And memorabilia about John Cable has already been sold. You know, 97% of it has already been sold. And the display, in addition to showing health, energy, and heart rate, shows a screen refresh rate of 60 kilohertz. So that's, yeah. Ed wasn't kidding. The Saint system really is like a baby. It has animated face of a baby and everything. And we're introduced to the invisibility. I don't really understand what the problem people have against it. Okay, so they can turn invisible, and they can move faster than otherwise humanly possible. Okay, what's the problem? Like, I, I could understand if it was like, I think teleportation might be too far into sci-fi territory for RoboCop, who is largely, it's like it takes place a little further into the future, but it's not quite, you know, but I don't know. I really don't have a problem with it. I mean, it's not like they cease to be. It's just that they're invisible to the naked eye. There's at least one vision mode that still clearly display them. So anyway, and they only stun the guy with electricity, so he sets off the alarm. They access the building's security system. This is OCP. We don't think, we do. There's that Michael subtleties of the satire again. But again, it is like, that's something that's true of a lot of rich people and corporations. Like, whether you like it or not, they're what they are doing is slowly, you know, it's worsening the climate crisis, among many other things, and eventually it's gonna bite them in the ass. And they're so obsessed with short-term wealth that they don't consider the long-term cost. And they're attacked by lasers. And RoboCop arrives and his police car is attacked by lasers. I definitely agree with those who say that the score sounds like something out of a Western. I guess the composer saw it as a Western or was told it was like a Western. It doesn't necessarily fit, but I don't think it's bad music. At most, it's just kind of a weird fit. But there's some Western stuff to the Punisher 2004. There, I also don't think it's necessarily the best, but it is, clearly they know how to make, yeah. Again, the downloading scene is genuinely tense and suspenseful. I guess if you're just taken out of the fiction by stuff like effects and such, it doesn't work for you, but what can I say? To me, it absolutely does. It's commonly filmed and edited and scored. Come out now, or there will be trouble. And RoboCop is in the right room, but they've gone invisible again. And, excuse me, and he's got multiple vision modes, and one of them does indeed spot them. Though it doesn't necessarily look like it was the thermal one, so I guess the invisibility also messes with their heat signature or something? I don't know. I can't believe one of them actually punched RoboCop. She can't possibly have thought that would actually work for her. Although yeah, that's from the movie. That happens in at least one of the movies too, doesn't it? That glowing blue staff really hit RoboCop hard. Again, I really appreciate in this, he's, not just this walking completely invulnerable thing. Let's see. Yeah, and I love the first movie, but in that, as far as the robot half of him goes, he's essentially unstoppable. It's only at the very, very end they can do any harm to him at all. Even Ed 209 doesn't end up spending a lot of time fighting him. And I will grant that Ed 209 does serious damage to him, but that's only fairly late into the film. And again, they don't spend very long fighting each other. In this, we're introduced to someone that can damage him, and then that character will walk off, reappear later. And I'll grant that, part of that is that this is a miniseries, but really, just in the first episode, which is 90 minutes, we do have damage done to him by Bone Machine, who doesn't just go down immediately when they fight. But, I mean, again, I love the first movie. I swear by it. But think about how much of the action is RoboCop showing up to a place and then shooting the people there. They can't, and I've heard people say, just shoot for, yeah, you can't, don't shoot for the helmet, just shoot for the, what's that gonna do though? There's no, the brain isn't down here. Why do you think they covered the part with the brain? It was specifically because they obviously they knew that people were going to try to shoot at his head, so they put the helmet to cover the entire brain, and all that would happen down here is it would ruin his smile or something. But yeah, awesome act. I also saw like I think the editing room's abridged script or something points out, it's essentially him slowly walking and then turning and shooting over and over, and it's crazy that we consider it action. I mean, I recently watched the trailer for the 2014 reboot, where he moves way faster, but yeah, it's yeah, the for a lot of the movie, it's just him walking around. He doesn't have to take cover. He doesn't have to just, yeah. Let's see. Yeah, it's this, what's it called? Yeah, I guess I said everything I wanted to there. Excuse me. Did he say that that's a casualty list? That is a lot of names of officers. I really hope somebody had fun coming up with at least some of those names. Like, that's like how on, I don't know if they still do it, but old, first 7 seasons of Simpsons, they put like funny names so that if you paused, it would say, the people, the people pausing to read all these names have too much spare time. The people writing all these names have too much spare time, that kind of thing. So because they've refused to kill anyone, a lot of officers have gotten killed, I think, is what it's saying, and this is presented as almost a good thing, not something horrible that should have been prevented. It's somewhat reminiscent of Starship Troopers, where it's celebrated when someone gets hurt in combat, or has been hurt, at least, there's that thing, congratulations. The infantry made me the man I am today, just, yeah. Let's see. Yeah, at some point I'm gonna do, yeah, I don't currently have a copy, but I'm gonna get a copy of the first Starship Troopers movie and do videos on it. At least one video on it. That's for sure. Just, I love how you see them in various classes early in the film. Notice how every teacher has been injured in some way. Like, they're not allowed to become a teacher if they don't go through military service, and they all got hurt. One of them lost an arm, one of them is now blind. All these, just, yeah. Anyway, Murphy does actually care about Cable, but Sarah shows up just for appearance and says they're going to get more people killed, and wonder if he's going to show up for each one. Yeah, it's James Murphy, in case it's been a while since you watched it. Now, I don't remember for sure, but I think maybe James Murphy was like 12 in the first movie, so 10 years later, that would make him about 22. That is a bit young for an executive, but then Sarah did say he's really risen to the top extremely quickly. And, it's not like nobody young is in charge of a lot. Just, usually it's that their parents own the place or something, but now, I was not able to watch this with subtitles, so there are things said in that show that I didn't quite pick up. I guess Sarah was the one who helped, and the Trust were the ones who made sure he rose through the ranks since they wanted him as an ally or something. I'm not entirely sure. And was she the one telling him that RoboCop was his father? Would that do anything? Yeah, I'm not entirely sure. And the electric shock could have destroyed RoboCop if not for his insulation. It was difficult to repair him. And he can't stop thinking of shooting John. I appreciate that this shows he really does continue to be really messed up by that. And RoboCop walks off with "Locate John Cable" on the, yeah. Now, see, if not for Bone Machine and John Cable's death, Sarah would already be fired. We can communicate him with directly now. Unlike Zero Corp, they did not think that voice communication would be too creepy. Hello? How are you? I guess the audio flashback echoing does mean that maybe RoboCop is trying to kill himself. Let's see. I mean, we already knew RoboCop was strong. Maybe it's more of this symbolism or whatever. But he just punched through a tombstone in a single blow, just like that. It didn't even seem to hurt. Well, yeah, he punches through a wall in the first movie, so I get, yeah, it's probably a reference to that. And they claim that Cable has no memory, which we do see later isn't true. Acquire secondary target, and it targets the ex-wife. Ouch. And RoboCable is sent to attack OCP CEO, so he shoots with both guns because the car's illegally parked. Nice reference to Ed 209. Excuse me. And with Bone Machine gone and Cable dead, Sarah does now use, let's see, that's not say. RoboCable, I think, yeah, to manipulate circumstances as expected. And the CEO doesn't want Damien talking about that in an open meeting. Have my full authority to implement any plan that will get RoboCop off the street. That's all I needed to hear. And let's see. And we're told, let's see, officially 5 games this season have been canceled due to smog. So again, a good kind of, yeah, very, very, what's it called? Let me think. Yeah, relevant, very relevant. Now, let's see. And they already have a documentary about RoboCop doing bad things. And I think some of those clips are from the movies, possibly the TV show. Oh wait, what's the show? Anime? Whatever. And RoboCop finds out he's being recalled. And a bunch of regular humans try to take him down. And they don't want to attack a fellow cop. I mean, it's not like he's undercover as a protester or something. And she threatens to take away their pensions, so they fire. And there's at least one more mention of, I'm not sure it's a threat the next time. I think it's someone who's actually fired. Damien maybe. So that's again, if you disobey, if you do something that a corporation doesn't like, they're gonna punish you to as much as they can. I mean, this Western music doesn't necessarily fit, but it's pretty good. I'm composed of titanium. I don't believe you are. Your move. And they run away. Good move. And that again, we needed something like that to just make, I mean, it's a really cool scene in general, but it's also like the scene makes completely clear it makes no sense to go up against RoboCop with regular guns. That's why we don't see that happen again. If you don't have that scene, there are going to be some viewers who are going to spend the rest of the miniseries going, why don't they send cops to take out RoboCop? Now you know. It would be completely useless to, the cops aren't going to go again because they know it's useless. OCP isn't going to send cops again because they want, you know, they do want results ultimately, even if sometimes they're really stupid about it. So instead, they later send the anti-cyborg police. And RoboCop is told that Sarah gave Cable the order. And RoboCable comes face to face with RoboCop. I really like the filming of RoboCable approaching RoboCop. Excuse me. And the two cyborgs open fire on each other. And RoboCable sends RoboCop staggering backwards with all the gunfire. And RoboCop can run and jump. I wouldn't think so, and I don't think he can outside of this. It's not as bad as in the third where he flies, but it's still a little weird. And one commentator says that, of course, RoboCop is frustrated. And RoboCop's driving away looking for an escape route with RoboCable very close behind. RoboCop drives his car into the harbor water. And Cable really has a great face for looking cool, even when all you can see is the mouth. And James almost accesses the classified files about Alex Murphy. I love the list of possible RoboCop. Like, it includes Barbara Streisand and Jimmy Hoffa. That's wow. Oh right, yeah, I forget. I still, let's see. I don't quite like I think the Jerry Springer Civic Square thing later on is not so. But yeah, I had actually when I noted about that, I forgot that they had these other references. But those really are the only references directly to pop culture stuff, kind of that's in. I'm not sure the first movie has much at all of that. Anyway, I'm not saying it's hilarious, but it is amusing when he starts talking about RoboCop's ass, and we get an insert that points to his big metal ass. Tonight on Exploitation Net, escape from RoboCop's lair. And RoboCop re-emerges and his GPS has shut off. And Damien catches Sarah with RoboCable. For all the poo-pooing, grown men should not use that term. That's not a, that's, I've heard it said elsewhere, but that really is just, yeah. And Damien sends the stuff he wanted to send before. Now, RoboCop is hiding out in the underground market of old Detroit, and he covered his massive cyborg body with like a cape and hood. It looks kind of silly, but then this is a world where sometimes things look silly. Let's see. You know, yeah, I'm not sure, you know, no character says, you know, points out how silly Bone Machine looks. So, yeah, it's just, it's a world where some things like that look silly. And the guy tries to sell RoboCop a newer version of the thing he needs, but that's not going to work. And RoboCop clotheslines the guy, which he also does in the first movie. I forgot that, but then I watched the trailer. But yeah, that guy like stole from a kid, then that has got to hurt. I'm amazed he didn't break his back. Kill him on the spot, maybe. But yeah, and I forget if he does it in the sequels. Play nice. Jordan's a decent actor. Again, not saying amazing. There's definitely times where her performance isn't amazing, but there are some really great, you know, notes in her performance, I guess is the way to say it. And I mean, yeah, I guess there are some times where it's pretty terrible. I'm not sure I agree that the RoboCop acting itself is terrible, but it's maybe not the best. Now, someone like me, and he's fixing the GPS, and we see that Jordan's mother is Anne, one of the people who stole Saints, and, you know, thus Anne is more humanized. You know, before she was basically just a criminal, and she's, you know, but and the RoboCop hunters go RoboCop hunting, and RoboCable is supposed to be working for them, not the other way around. Which RoboCable just like the look on his face again. You can't even see. You can only see like the mouth and such, but he does not like being told that. And Anne, Jordan's mother, counters all of RoboCop's prime directives. Right from the start, this franchise has been about exploring whether RoboCop would actually be a good thing to deal with crime. So I'm glad this is further exploring that, similar to the two Judge Dredd movies. And this is also something like, I'm not sure the first movie really has. Let me think. Are there any humanized criminals in maybe the third one? But they're like trying to, yeah, they're like homeless or something, and they're technically criminals, but they're clearly very human. But other than that, and again, I'm sorry, that movie is terrible. I I'll rewatch it to do a video on it, but I think I would rather watch all 6 hours of this than the, I don't know, 90 minutes of that. Now, but yeah, you know, here we clearly do have people who are, you know, you understand why they're not, yeah, they're in as good a situation as they can be. And RoboCop contacts Cable, and James Murphy manages to get into security concepts. RoboCop and Cable fight again, and it does start out as just Cable curb stomping RoboCop, Cable stomping, if you will. And Cable throws RoboCop through the air and then kicks him through a wall, Kool-Aid Man style. I would say that RoboCop is simply far too heavy for that to be possible, but then Cable is extremely strong, and they go through another wall. I really don't understand how other people can say they take no enjoyment in watching the action scenes in this miniseries. I think let's see, the I think I maybe saw someone say that they thought the action goes on for too long and there are too many action scenes for the considering the duration. I don't know. I can maybe sort of see that. I just don't agree with it. I will say it is probably longer than other things from 2000, but yeah, it feels more like something that came out, you know, a bit later. And RoboCop sends the recording of Cable to RoboCable. I will say, in this scene, some of the time, the Cable actor's lower lip looks like he's about to start bawling or something. It's not very badass looking. And I get that he's maybe supposed to be more emotional, but it looks like he looks way more emotionally devastated than I really think this character, yeah, is capable of, maybe, or I don't know. And when Cable watches the video of himself die, he moves as though he is being shot. And Jordan caught up to RoboCop to get her teddy bear, but the RoboCop hunters caught up with him too. Excuse me. Lay down your weapon and come with us. We have been authorized to use lethal force. And they come at RoboCop, so he defends himself. Very cool. And RoboCable is still frozen in place, trying to cope with the recording. Whatever you do, do not damage the new unit. It has not been paid for yet. Anarchy shows up as, let's see, as well as, what does that say? Right, and RoboCop can barely reach his gun. Yeah, let me just briefly say, I am not going to defend the name Anarchy. That is dumb. I'm sorry. I completely agree with the people who criticize that. That is a dumb pun, and it's just, no. Not good. Bad. Very bad. And Jordan is hit by one of the electrical blasts, so Anne comes into action. RoboCop struggles to reach Jordan. Anne is subdued, and RoboCop has sustained critical damage. RoboCable gradually fights against the... And Carver's going to shoot Anne, and RoboCable starts shooting the cyborg hunters, saving Anne, RoboCop, and Jordan. How have you been, partner? Better. And the news claim RoboCop and RoboCable have both been destroyed. And the CEO dismisses Damien as an executive, and he doesn't get to keep Saint. They consider it OCP property. And Damien takes over for Ed and doesn't tell him that he's no longer an executive. Targets the boardroom, increases the heat and pressure, killing all of them. Like the atmospheric kind of thing, yeah. I don't, it's been too long. What subject is that? Whatever. One of my teachers would absolutely just be so disappointed, but I do not remember exactly why. But yes, increasing that kind of atmospheric pressure like that would kill them for reasons that have been scientifically, like, yeah, it's a thing, and it is like, hypothetically, let's say, is that an engine or is that thunder? Pretty sure it's not thunder. Yeah, anyway. You know, you might say, why would you have a thing that can only be used to kill? Well, hypothetically, if they have, let's say that they get something from another planet or something, and it has a different atmospheric pressure and such than here, you would want to keep it in a room that has the same atmospheric pressure, and then the people entering and exiting can put on like suits so they can deal with it. But you know, you would want to make sure that it doesn't take damage from being in the wrong kind of atmospheric. Yeah. James continues to look at the file about RoboCop, and he becomes aware that his father is RoboCop, and RoboCop and RoboCable walk off together. They'll be coming for us. I know. Again, every single one of these openings and endings have me really determined to keep watching. You know, determined to keep watching the rest of the episode, determined to keep watching the next episode. Okay, so this one was a much shorter set of notes. Okay, so jets, I guess. Not sure why there are jets out there, but whatever. As long as it's not thunder. Resurrection. RoboCable versus the anti-RoboCop squad is pretty cool. And at first RoboCable does really well against them, but then some of them do give him a little trouble. And they've got those large rifles that fire explosive shells like in the first movie. One of the motorcycles has like these two automatic guns on the front. Just how can you not enjoy, excuse me, this? Maybe overall Paige Fletcher was not the right actor to play RoboCop, but he does convey a lot of emotion through only the lower half of his face when the helmet is on. I love Geraint Wyn Davies, if that's how I pronounce it, the actor who plays Katie. And I think he might also, is he also Canadian? That's another reason to love Canada. A hearty good evening to you, Mr. Stubbs. Yeah, that's where I know him from. I know, I should watch that other, he was like the lead on this show where he's like a vampire or something, and I need that show. You know, I need to be able to watch that show yesterday. Percy, do you know anyone who might be qualified? And Sarah knows James knows about RoboCop. Who doesn't know that James knows? And he certainly doesn't know that Sarah knows that James knows. In this business, never ask a question if you don't want to know the answer. The presumption of my death are greatly exaggerated. And Katie has installed a Svengali chip, which will fry Cable if he doesn't do what he wants. Again, bringing that to... I'm glad that that didn't happen to RoboCop himself. But instead, you know, yeah, with RoboCable, it is... honestly, if he had done that to Alex Murphy, RoboCop, I think he might have just pushed him to the point where he killed him. He would have RoboCop would have pushed K-Dick to the point where K-Dick turned the thing so high up that it killed RoboCop, just so that he wouldn't be able to be abused. But Cable, it's not quite the same. Yeah. And I feel like this does a good job of maintaining and respecting that without ending up lame, because, I mean, he's not quite Superman or something, but he can be a little bit of a goody two-shoes, He's not the most, like, edgy kind of character. And again, 1987, he didn't need to be. But, yeah, by 2000 standards, they wanted something edgier. That's edgier, not Ed Sheeran here. Yeah. And he helps RoboCop to return the favor. You can't help him. If he's still out there, he's on his own. I quite like Sarah's sly smiles. I'd like to see the actors in something else. One lone dissenting voice increases our credibility. Hello, Fox News. That's why they have pretend liberals on. And James shuts down RoboCop's quote-unquote home. Excuse me. I had forgotten that the Mandy clones of each other appeared outside of the ad for enhancement. Alex remembers his death. Ed and Damien struggle to show off Saint. Let's see. You know what? Let me just briefly come to think of it. I'm not 100% certain if the version I've watched of this was a slightly toned down version with less gore and violence. I guess it might have been. So if I say something where you're like, wait, there was more violence than that, that's why. And the Legion virus sounds nasty. And Cable reluctantly agrees to recover Legion. You tell me where you are, and I'll try to find you. That sounds like someone made it say that so that they could find her. And Anarchy starts telling RoboCop about Legion's legacy. And Cable's baby died. And Anarchy used to work for K-Dick. Another thing I love, I'm not sure that it's maybe they should have named a nicer character after him, but the name K-Dick, that really is a tribute to science fiction author Philip K. Dick, who he didn't write RoboCop, but he almost might have, like hypothetically, let me think. I am afraid, I think that he did die before 1987. I think he died in 1982. I forget if he just barely survived long enough to see the adaptation of, Blade Runner, the adaptation of Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep. I wonder why they didn't just use that same title for the movie. Meanwhile, it does kind of suck that there's like this other book that's also called Blade Runner, and there it actually makes sense that Anyway. Let's see. Right. If Philip K. Dick had been alive by 1987, there's some chance that he, and they had approached him, he could have written RoboCop. It would have turned out slightly different, but there's a lot in RoboCop that is, it's maybe somewhat inspired by his writings. And K-Dick is Jordan's father, or at the very least, Jordan believes he is. I think Rocket Boy is in love. RoboCop and Cable briefly talk on the phone, sort of. And RoboCop will turn on the beacon so that Cable will be able to locate them now. Let's see. yeah, sorry, so that Cable will be able to locate them now that the situation is stable. This is no fable. And K-Dick was listening to Cable and RoboCop, and it's again, it's this great because you're thinking if K-Dick doesn't know, then Cable can pretend he can't do it. But then right after, and it's also like, Cable doesn't, immediately like turn it off and say, ah, there's some kind of malfunctioning with the, no. He does actually go ahead and, yeah, he does some messed up things over the course of these 4 episodes. And K-Dick used an invisible truck to run over at least one of the anti-RoboCop people. Was that a reference to that one guy who got covered in toxic waste at the end of the first one, who also then got run over? Although I heard that there's this, like, toned down version where the car swerves and then misses him, and then you just don't see him again. It's like, I mean, you have to know that something was changed there, right? Anyway. And the reason Anarchy and the others worked for K-Dick was he had chips in their heads as well. I'm not alone. Well, that's not good. And Cable gets to RoboCop, and RoboCop and Cable shoot. And slow motion as the bullets ricochet. And no, it's not bullet time. According to the Matrix, bullet time is when the camera spins 360 degrees around something. It's not just slow motion when bullets are fired. And RoboCop, RoboCable, and Anarchy's people fight the anti-RoboCop soldiers. Slightly contrived that the bullet ricochets and gets debris to fall on RoboCop. I meant to mention at the time, there was this very dark joke where I guess this guy was like polishing windows or something. He was like knocked off the building, falling down because Damien wanted to show off Saint at that exact time. Yeah, that's kind of messed up. And I will say I think that, again, it might be that I watched an edited version, but I think my version only showed the CG, and it wasn't entirely convincing. It was a little. I feel like maybe they should have removed that joke if they couldn't make the effects more convincing. It would have been extremely easy to remove that joke. Yeah. And the virus has been inside Jordan this entire time. She's my avatar. James Cameron or Last Airbender? Jordan's scream is quite horrifying, but honestly, she didn't look particularly unhappy to be in the chair up to that point. I don't know. Thank you, Jordan. You're everything I ever wanted in a child. The end to human civilization as we know it. What is it? What is it? The end of RoboCop. I'm not going to claim that Geraint Wyn Davies' performance is low-key. Maybe it is too broad. Maybe it's too much. But he's enjoyable to watch. And I would feel that way even if I didn't already love him before watching this. The graphic that says upload in progress, I feel like it would have benefited from like a status bar percentage count or something. Mr. Cable, you might want to clean this up. You gotta admit, he is super into this. And RoboCop and RoboCable standing, next to each other, helping each other take out the entire RoboCop squad. Yeah. I disagree with those that say there's too much or too little. What does that say? It's action. And I think it's also sufficiently varied that it never feels too long. Really, there's no two action scenes in this that are exactly the same. There's always some significant difference between the different scenes, which is quite impressive. I almost said incredible, which I wouldn't go that far. Excuse me. Anarchy gets a good start on the fight against K-Dick, but he's skilled at martial arts as well. And RoboCop will not let RoboCable shoot his son. And the boardroom reacts to RoboCable and RoboCop aiming at each other. And James gets wounded as, you know, yes, a shotgun is fired by an anti-RoboCop guy. Your move, gentlemen. He usually says your move, creep, but that would have been a little bit disrespectful. You know, these guys are working for the same guys he used to, and yeah, it's a little like, I mean, as far as they know, RoboCop has gone rogue. You know, it's just like they're there so that, you know, this cyborg won't go around killing, you know, innocent people, basically. And I also really appreciate in this, he does continue to say, you're making a mistake. Dead or alive, you're coming with me, and other things he did in the first movie. And RoboCop tries to talk James out of frying him with the EMP. Okay, around this time, I will grant clearly they lacked some coverage, so what they did was rewind footage they had to make someone look in a direction they want them to or the like, and it's very obvious and very awkward. That's, yeah. But they needed they did need those shots, you know, so yeah. And he wants to shoot James. James feels he needs to kill RoboCop for abandoning him. RoboCop takes off the helmet. James doesn't kill him. So the board all believe that RoboCop is dead now, which is again a great, like, yeah. So yeah, okay, from now on, yeah, now these episodes are taking much less time to get through, so it won't be crazy long by my standards anyway. Crash and Burn. So episode 3 of, no wait, sorry, that is episode 4 of 4. Okay. I have to say, I really didn't see coming that Damien would make the news so superficial with all attractive women, parties, and such. I mean, it was already pure propaganda, but anyway, his personality up to this point didn't get me thinking of parties and all women being objects and such. It doesn't surprise me that he doesn't respect women, but I don't know. And James is told about Legion. And RoboCop found Cable. James realizes Legion will be uploaded onto Saint. And which is again a good, like, isn't he the only character who really knows about Saint? Sorry, in that group, I mean, excuse me. So he, you know, he's the one who can piece that together, and he's certainly the only one who has any chance of accessing the building. And Damien wants Sarah to not only face the facts but also wake up. They really should have worked Get Real in there to have the cliche hat trick. You're a kid, your call. James reminds me somewhat of the vice presidents in from American Psycho, which, I mean, pretty sure this came out before American Psycho, so again, like, I mean, they're going for the same thing. It's not, you know, American Psycho wasn't the first to have that sort of thing, so they were probably just imitating the same thing. What I'm saying is, I think they did a good job. He's very, very different from the, you know, the some of the executives could be kind of goofy in RoboCop. Like, doesn't one of them like start? You know, he like tries to eat, and it's like, this is like baby food. You're gonna have some more, and he just keeps eating it or something. Or anything. I mean, that's that's Paul Verhoeven's sense of humor for you. You know, sometimes there'll just be this really goofy stuff that's kind of weird and just, yeah. You know, that's something Film Brain pointed out about the remake of uh, Total Recall. You know, that the new one played it painfully serious, where the other one was goofy. But yeah, I think it was a good choice. He comes across as this really, like, heartless executive kind of. With those shades, Annie completes the Matrix look. After all that revving, the car moves that slowly. Were they worried they'd run into the camera or something? Saint, are you being evasive? You need Elizabeth Warren questioning Saint, then you get clear answers. Bank CEO resignations. I like that it actually responds, I'm not programmed to be evasive. That's not an answer, though. That's like, yeah, yeah. In a completely unrelated story, there's that lack of subtlety again. But again, I do appreciate that there's satire. Like, the satire was so stupid in the third RoboCop movie. It was way too obvious. I mean, I really do think that it almost is criminal that they make a movie that's for children. That's what it is. RoboCop 3 is a movie made for children as a follow-up to one of the goriest, grossest, most, like, brutal movies ever made. It really is incredibly, like, when you see Ed 209 just, you know, completely destroy that one guy at the start of the movie, you know, that's horrifying. And then the third one, I now have full authorization to be loyal as a puppy. And Alex rams through the gate. Maybe it shouldn't have been made of wood. That's a. They didn't have to show that it's so clearly made of wood. You know, I would rather have we didn't see the gate being crashed through, but it's like it's clearly supposed to look like metal, and it's just yeah. James, like, was it a Yahoo or a Yeehaw, something like that? It's worth suffering through any shortcoming the show has had so far. How did they get the car to jump like that? Is it just Cause 3? Not complaining. And I know how they did it as filmmakers, but I'm saying how did, like, yeah, how in universe? What's the explanation? And Annie shoots at the cop cars. RoboCop doesn't like it. Very good stunt crash. Really messed up to see Katie holding his daughter close due to the virus. And Cable greets Sarah. What goes around comes around. Wait, greets or grabs? Oh, fine, whatever. Yeah. Okay, the setup takes too long with the guy cleaning the windows and RoboCop driving through the window. Lasers. Trying to hurt them too badly. And leg wounds, because T2. Awkward Annie jump. Unfunny joke as Damien rehearses how to say technology is our friend. The show isn't necessarily that good at jokes. I'm unfiring. He can't even say rehiring properly. It just comes out as unfiring. Ed recognizes Annie. Annie steps out of shot. Awkward. You're fired. Make up your mind. And Ed tries to turn off lasers. I'm sorry, I missed one. Dude, just say, wait, it's not off yet. I really don't understand. Like he's in constant, like, radio communication with them. It's not like a... Anyway. And Sarah intentionally aborting the baby and talking about it so coldly. It's a really gross misogynistic trope. And Kadik starts frying Cable, so he'll release Sarah. This feels like a proper finale with, you know, Legion combining with already dangerous Saint, Cable and RoboCop both fighting in the same place, Annie, James, and Damien quote-unquote on the same side. Excuse me. And Kadik threatens to rip Sarah's eyes out of their sockets. I really appreciate just how brutal and vicious of a, you know, villain he is. He really is completely without any kind of mercy, or he does not hold back at all. Excuse me. Damien wants to revise. Yeah, sorry, these jokes are just not that funny. Maybe it's wearing more on me the more of them I hear. And RoboCop and RoboCable shoot at each other over whether to kill the guards. Excuse me. more pretty good action. Explosions, Robo's on fire, flying through the air. Maybe not all of the time, but some of the time this has really good production value. Annie attacks Kadik for her daughter. Second time Kadik and Annie fight on screen, so we know they're roughly evenly matched. Maybe this time Annie has something up her sleeve, you know. And Damien and Sarah won't turn off Saint. And James and Sarah both yell, "Shut up, Damien." See, considering he has the name Damien, I mean, he's too comical too much of the time. Considering that this is also a show that has, you know, Kadik. I feel like maybe they should have just swapped those names around or something. But then, I mean, the guy with the name Kadik should be the more compelling character, and he is, so. Annie couldn't quite catch up to the elevator. Damien and Sarah flirt more than once. And it's, of course, you know, that's, yeah, Sarah, yeah, she's ruthless. You know, we know that by now. Sarah shoves Damien down the elevator shaft. I, for one, still remember the way she laughed. I will grant it looks kind of fake when he lands, that debris falling. I'm not gonna lie, when Damien reached into his suit in order to get the car to activate the elevator, for a second there, I thought he was gonna bring out the audio recorder and record something like "Never turn your back on an elevator" or something. I'm saying something way too much. Oh, right, yeah. I considered voice typing this before. Now that I see it in writing, I have to say, them naming the square this Jerry Springer Civic Square is kind of stupid. Excuse me. You know what? Maybe it's just because by now I've heard so many bad jokes on the show. So early on, got a chuckle out of RoboCop's ass and Barbra Streisand and Jimmy Hoffa. But now I'm just yeah. I don't think it's too long overall. I think it has the right length. It's just that some of the lesser qualities of it, you know, they get to me more by the time I've watched. I think it would have, if it was much longer, I think it would have been too long. And much shorter would have been too short. But again, I can't say about the fan edit. So. And Ed is like, "Saint, you can't do this. We're the ones who made you." Damien flew the coop, and a real rough landing. He may have to settle for the bronze. And Damien is attacked by the lasers he used to trust to keep people out. Ironic, like rain, or maybe just coincidental. They do a pretty decent job here of lasers actually cutting his limbs. And then, you know, in the earlier part, it looked like the lasers would just kill you by touch, almost like spears or poison or something. But then again, maybe it was just cut away, and then here they weren't able to cut it away or something. Or maybe before it was, maybe in the earlier part, it was so bloody that they cut away from it for this, yeah, more cyborg on cyborg violence. See, again, this fight is different from the other ones. This is essentially like a hand-to-hand fight. You know, there's some boxing in there, some wrestling. I can understand people who think it looks silly, but when you have two big cyborgs like this, you have to have them fight in some way without guns and such. And Cable appears to disable RoboCop through, like, electrocution or what it's, yeah. Well, let's see, electrocution means being electrified until you die from it, so it's not quite that. It appears to be electrocution. It manages to disarm the lasers. I love how Kadik treats James Murphy with absolutely no respect. And who are you? Well, okay then, Jimmy. Just this guy. I if they make a sequel, I would like to see a prequel where Kadik is the protagonist, and like 90% of the show is scenes with him, and just I he's just so much fun. And Annie and Kadik, attack each other with electricity. We already knew both of them had that weapon, but this is the first time they really both use it on each other at the same time like this. So again, it's like they learn from the fights and figure out I have to try something else because what I did last time didn't work. So just yeah. And Cable grabs James by the throat. Ed sneaks by. I'm sorry, Ed. I'm afraid I can't do that. Of course they were going to go for that reference. I would have made that reference if they hadn't. Let's see. Hey, Tin Man, what does that say? Cop? Are you? And we get flashback. And Jordan tries to wake up Annie as the audience dreads she might actually be dead this time. And this, I don't know, 10-year-old girl is like, trying to wake up her dead mother who died right in front of her in like a very painful way. And Katie can't get Jordan to stop focusing on her mother. Maybe when you're a little older, I explain it to you. But for now, we'll just say Mom was real bad. It was real mean to Dad and made me real mad. But I still feel sad that I put her on timeout. 10 minutes to full automation. Reevaluate safety protocols. And Cable refuses Kadik's order. They struggle to hold the elevator open, and RoboCop gets there just in time and opens it. You go with these nice men. Mommy's gotta go kick some ass. And let's see, more action between RoboCop and Cable, but this time Cable seems to be dominating, where before they were fairly evenly matched. I like the build-up to Annie and Kadik fighting. Annie knocks over the machines. Kadik and Anarchy start dying from the virus. Very suspenseful as the virus hits more and more of Annie's body, her right knee, her left arm, and then her leg starts disappearing. Or being eaten by the virus, I guess. Excuse me. And RoboCop struggles as he tries to catch up to Cable, who... What does that say? Right, who has James, Jordan, and Ed cornered. We belong dead, and RoboCable stabs RoboCop in the back of his head. That sharp interface thing. And Cable triggers the EMP at Saint's core, which will of course also take himself out. He does this just in time before the virus spreads, since the full automation countdown does reach 0. And yeah, we already knew that he's, he even makes the reference. Excuse me, it's the Cable maneuver, the sacrifice play. I'm really glad, my VHS tape stopped playing at that point. I'm really glad I did at least get to see the countdown reach 0 and the EMP trigger, and yeah. Now, yeah, the various ways the characters fight to win here at the end fits their characterizations. Cable, RoboCop, Ed, Annie, Kadik. Maybe it's that I haven't watched enough miniseries, or at least enough miniseries that have like action and such, but like, I mean, I relatively recently rewatched, what's it called? 5 Days to Midnight, and I enjoyed it, but by the time you get to the ending and you find out some of the final answers, it's kind of, I mean, it was pretty good. I forget. I feel like the Lost Room maybe also lost a little bit near the end, and I just don't know that I feel like that's the case here. I feel like with this, they managed to tie everything together well. Now, let me think. Yeah, I'm just gonna I have something brief here. Nah. I'll make it its own section. Okay, so this next part, notes taken before watching. And yeah, so I watched, there's this 26-minute, 37-second review by It Ain't Broke, and they don't like it. And one of them says Paige Fletcher is better as Alex, where he's great, than as RoboCop, where he's terrible. I do definitely think he's better as Alex, yes. And he points out that Cable's face is kind of squished under the helmet. And let's see, then there's this other guy. See, I haven't been writing this stuff down. I want to say it's called Beyond the Realm or something. But yeah, like if you know, his videos start with the words RoboCop Prime Directives, and then it has the episode title, and then, 2001 after the episode title. That's how you can very easily find them. Now, so his review of Dark Justice, he enjoyed Bone Machine's cheesiness. The opening has 3 bodies blowing up, explosive bullets. Acting is not bad, despite budget limits on other things. And this first episode does not have a lot of action. And about Meltdown, he says the tapes advertised on the TV look cool, has a lot more action than Dark Justice. I think it's in this video where he said he wasn't sure if, like, Jordan, the girl, was a human or a cyborg or something. How is she carrying the Legion virus, like, if she's human? The way I see it, basically she's a carrier. She's not infected herself, but a carrier. He did something to make sure that she herself couldn't get infected, which is not to say that he wouldn't kill her himself once he was done, once he had the virus, or maybe she would die by the virus once it was released into the air. But as far as I understand, she is completely human, and he made her a carrier. He didn't infect her, but he put it in her body as a carrier. Yeah. Which hypothetically is something you could do. It's not, I'm not sure it's quite feasible from today's science, but this is, yeah, science fiction. And let's see, in his resurrection review, he quotes the line, "Your fat black ass is mine." And see, I didn't write down any notes from his review of the final episode, but he made some points that I think, let me think. I feel like he said that he thought it did a decent job of tying things together from the other episodes. I'm not entirely sure. I only watched it right before clicking record, so I didn't take down notes. Okay, so yeah, that was in fact a very short segment, but that takes us to the final segment, IMDb, Wikipedia, and critic sites. Okay, so we're on page 13 of 60. Let's see. I guess for now, I'm gonna go with this. Okay, so and okay, so and yeah, I guess I'm not gonna this. Okay, so there is no tomato meter, no pro reviews, no user reviews, no Metacritic pro reviews, no Metacritic user reviews. I did find a few external reviews off IMDb, and other than that, all the reviews I have are IMDb ones, but yeah, still enough to fill. Okay, so now on page 15 of 60, so 40 some pages of IMDb reviews. Anyway, let's see. I guess this. See, I feel like there's just too many. I feel like a lot of these people just they think there's some really bad things, so all they do in their review is talk about the bad things. If you just want to know the bad things, read the IMDb reviews. Not all of them are equally well written, but overall, I would say they cover all the bad things, and I personally think they go too far with some of what they say. But I just don't. Isn't it kind of a waste? I used to do this myself. I used to make reviews that were only negative. Isn't it kind of a waste of time if all you talk about is the negative when there's clearly some positive, and when everybody else is also only talking about the negative? Anyway. So let's see. So okay, let's see. I noted that there might be something interesting here, so I'm gonna real quick. Hmm. Okay, yeah. So, oh, they're right. IMDb, other IMDb stuff before I get to the IMDb reviews. Trivia. So yeah, apparently Paige Fletcher, who does play Alex Murphy, RoboCop, in this was supposed to play the role in the 1994 TV series, but turned it down due to recent falling out with television producers in previous series and other TV work. And the guy who did play Richard Eden, he wanted to reprise his role in this that he did in 1994. Negotiation never worked out. The name Katie gives a homage to sci-fi writer Philip K. Dick. And Paige Fletcher is the fourth actor, preceded by Peter Weller, Robert John Burke, and Richard Eden. And let's see. At the end of the second, yeah, sorry, this is the one goof that they have listed. Character error. At the end of the second part, Meltdown, this quote is given. The danger of the past was that men became slaves. The danger of the future is that man may become robots. The film credit is to Thoreau, which is impossible, as the robot did not enter the English language until more than 60 years after Thoreau's death. This quote is actually from Eric Fromm. See, again, that's impressive. Like, how can you not at least briefly, just Wikipedia or Google the information? Just, that's embarrassing. I'm sorry, but that is like, how do you get the word 60 years? Anyway. And You have been recalled. What are you prepared to do? Whatever it takes. Yeah, and then they have the whole chess. Yeah, I'm on it. And let's see. And there's some stuff about alternative versions, not particularly interesting, so I'm not really allowed. Nothing especially interesting in the RoboCop, sorry, in the movie connections page. Actually, yeah, some of this is, I had forgotten this, but I guess it's not particularly surprising. This is listed as referencing Rio Bravo, The Magnificent Seven, Westworld, and Assault on Precinct 13. Those are, yeah, you know, I can kind of see that how the that's the westerny stuff. Let's see. And the let's see. And then on the frequently asked questions, someone gave the chronological order of the RoboCop series, and yeah, it's definitely at least somewhat wrong. It says that there's 13 years between RoboCop 1 and this, when that's definitely not. And it also seems to think that this is in the same continuity as the other sequels, when this is only in continuity with the first movie, not the other ones. Anyway, let's see. Right, so Wikipedia for this, and it's let's see. And yeah, awesome. I had completely forgotten some of these character names. I mean, again, I'm not sure how many of them I heard spoken, but I did read this before watching. In addition to Anarchy, we have Chuck Conflagration. I don't know if Carver RH is a pun or not. Abby Normal. Yeah, it's a little weird at least. And Lex Icon or Lexicon. I don't know. Now the yeah. Yeah, so this, yeah, continuity. Prime Directive takes place 10 years after RoboCop. The series is largely considered an alternate reality to the films, as major events of the second and third films and the subsequent series are almost completely ignored. In contrast to the events shown in the films, Delta City is developed, OCP is not dissolved. Let's see. In the theatrical movie series, Murphy is publicly revealed to have been converted into RoboCop, only uses his legally deceased name. Whereas in this series, Murphy's identity remains secret until the fourth episode, which is legally recognized Police Commander Alex Murphy, who known as RoboCop Model 01 or 01. And yeah, again, I mean, without OCP and Delta City, those are some of the most interesting. Let me think. As far as I remember, in the first movie, they are working on Delta City. They haven't completed yet, and they're talking about, well, we need to you know, they need something to, yeah, and actually I'm not entirely sure if it's, I don't remember if it's related or not, but they do need something like RoboCop. And RoboCop or Red 209, some kind of, shoot first, ask questions later cop who will go around and, and they're like, well, can't be a human cop because all the bad guys have guns. They're just going to blow, yeah, you see that quite clearly in the first movie. They shoot his, is it both hands? I forget, but they shoot several of his limbs, blow them clean off, and then they shoot him in the head, and he's brought back as RoboCop. Almost his entire body is now metal. So, no, almost nothing human left. So, but yeah, with OCP still in place, they have a lot of satire here over OCP that couldn't have been done in movie series and weren't done. They have more things to say, so it makes sense to keep OCP around. I don't know, OCP getting, is that like at the end of the third movie, or does that happen in the series? I don't remember that. Anyway, but I feel like I remember that they didn't manage to complete Delta City. I don't remember if they end up just giving up on it. But yeah, this says Delta City is completed, and then what might be interesting to happen there. And we do still go to Old Detroit. Yeah, I think that's interesting to have a kind of, what if they did manage to complete Delta City? And then we still see that they're completely ruthless. They're still willing to have people, they don't mind people dying as long as they can make a buck off it. Different status quo and new things said with it that don't contradict what is, Now, let's see. But apparently O'Brien, who I think was one of the script writers, stated there's nothing in PD that significantly contradicts those other versions, which, I'm not sure. The reasoning behind setting our story 10 years later was to just give ourselves some distance, creatively and temporally, to tell our tale, and not out of any disrespect for those earlier incarnations, nor the people responsible for them. I don't think there's that much problem with disrespect for the people, except, the Frank Miller did work some on the script for 2 and 3, and he deserves some respect. So, but other than that, and again, I do like some of the actors involved in the sequels. Isn't Rip Torn the CEO in the third one? Wow, that really does not make any sense. Anyway, let's see. Oh, right, yeah. In regards to the character of Anne Lewis, O'Brien went on to say, as far as we were concerned, Anne Lewis is dead. Whether this happened in RoboCop 3 or not, we leave to the discretion of the individual viewer. I like her in the first movie. I don't remember anything about her actions in the second. And then the third, she dies early on. And, like, the rest of the movie is kind of like, look at how awful they are killing Anne Lewis. I'm sorry, I didn't even remember that she wasn't mentioned in this. I don't think she's that important past the first movie. She's important there. She helps Alex remember that he used to be human. And it's because he does that thing, like, before he puts the gun back down. Just like TJ Laser at the TJ Hooker knockoff, which is, yeah. She's definitely important in the first one. I don't remember about the second one, and certainly, in the third, like, if you kill a character just to motivate another character, you probably don't think very highly of that character that you're killing, because if you think the most important, the most interesting thing you can do with a character is kill them off. Yeah. And let's see. Let's see. Yeah, so 10 years after the events, this is the plot summary. RoboCop has become outdated and tired. Delta City, formerly Detroit, is now considered the safest place on Earth, and he is no longer viewed as particularly necessary. And see, also, this one, like in the movies, they deal with this whole thing of like a possible police strike. And that's, again, I feel like they do a good job of dealing with that in the movies, so this show doesn't really address that. And yeah, it's now the first half of the series was Alex Murphy's former partner, John G. Cable, is named by RoboCop after his system is hacked, programmed to terminate Cables, and resurrected as cyborg. Aspects of RoboCop model, save for color and the addition of the second sidearm. Sent to destroy RoboCop, but after several battles, Cable convinced to ally with Murphy. Meanwhile, OCP, on the verge of bankruptcy, is taken over by a scheming executive, Damien Lowe, manages to murder the entire board of directors. Bring OCP back, he plans to use an artificial intelligence called Saint to automate the entire city. The second half of the series introduces Dr. David Kadick, who plans to introduce a biotech virus called Legion, wipe out not only Delta City, but all life on the planet, infecting computers and people alike. He took from the RoboCable, and chipping in that causes pain or death at Cage's discretion. RoboCop receives aid from a group of thieves led by Anarchy, who are determined to stop Kadick. RoboCop's own son, James, now fully grown, aware of his father's fate. RoboCop's ragtag band race to stop Kadick from infiltrating OCP Tower and activating Saint, which would presumably kill almost all humans. During the confrontation, RoboCop and James reconcile with each other, managing to rekindle RoboCable's previous personality. Key and Kadick both die during confrontation with each other, utilizing James' EMP device. Having shut down RoboCop, RoboCable, and Legion are terminated. That's right, RoboCop gets rebooted without his previous OCP restriction programming, as well as restoring his identity as Alex Murphy, as opposed to an OCP product number. Prime Directives. After viewing a goodbye message left by Cable, Murphy returns to active duty to stop the resultant crime in Delta City due to the EMP pulse blacking out the city, deciding by his own that he will follow his three prime directives: serve the public trust, protect the innocent, and uphold the law. And in the epilogue, Murphy and his allies form the Prime Directives Foundation, while OCP is disgraced publicly, facing thousands of indictments and a multi-trillion-dollar class action lawsuit. Yeah. See, I think that's a very good way to... Yeah, I'd forgotten. He doesn't stay dead. He doesn't die. The thing with deciding by his own will he will follow his three prime directives, that's Alex Murphy, in a nutshell. Even if he doesn't have to, that's what he wants to do. I think that's a very strong, Cable makes the sacrifice play, and Murphy decides, even if he doesn't have to, he's going to follow those rules because he believes in them. And let's see. And yeah. Oh, right, and it aired on the Sci-Fi Channel. See, I think that, excuse me, that didn't exactly help matters. And right, so here we get to, okay, so 31 pages of IMDb reviews. 38 reviews, right. So, let's see. And okay, so I'm just briefly gonna... Yeah, it doesn't make sense to read only part of this, so I'm just... On the first two RoboCop feature films, the producers hired renowned mime artist and choreographer Moni Yakim, I'm sorry if that's not how that's pronounced, to help Peter Weller, who played the child in those pictures, get a handle on the role's intense physicality, and the investment paid off handsomely. On Prime Directives, however, apparently such expenditures were deemed superfluous and eliminated from the budget. Yet, considering that RoboCop is the miniseries' main character, the character needing to be lavished with the most attention, especially with regard to issues of movement and ambulation so as to ensure precise execution and verisimilitude, such an oversight on director Julian Grant's part is simply beyond the pale. The sad result, Paige Fletcher, who plays RoboCop in PD, spends most of his time stumbling and bumbling about in the robosuit, fists eternally and inexplicably clenched, wildly swinging his arms to and fro in a bizarre echo of Rock'em Sock'em Robots, and walking as if they were a warm, freshly laid dump permanently ensconced in his robo drawers. That's pretty funny. I mean, it's somewhat. I really don't. I really didn't see it as that bad, but I don't know. But there is definitely some truth to what he says. Now, let's see. Let's see. Yeah, so let's see. Okay, this guy gave it an 8 out of 10. Yeah, see, this guy says, while it's not nearly as good as the original, it has its merits. It actually has a plausible plot, not anything like Robo 2 and 3. It has violent moments, many flashbacks, it changes a little of the history, but it's close enough for my tastes. I eagerly await the next installment, which will hopefully come soon. Yeah, so, okay, I don't know if that was a review of one of the episodes. It's off the main page from for the miniseries, so anyway. The see, I don't remember about if the second movie has a plausible plot. I do seem to I what I remember of the third isn't plausible. You've got the samurai robot. You've got RoboCop flying. Yeah, it's so stupid. You know, Rod Hilton wrote that. You know, if you write the words RoboCop flies using a jetpack, you know, your computer should automatically delete everything you've written and shut down or something like that. And yeah, it's yeah. Now let's see. Let's see. Excuse me. Right, this one review actually gives a what's it called, like a brief summary of each individual episode. That's at least useful for, you know, if you watch one episode and you don't want to watch the rest of them to find out what happens in them. So, you know, it's not a complete waste. I didn't read every word of it, so maybe it's otherwise also not that bad. It just why put a lot of time and effort into just complaining about things about it without at least talking about the things that, yeah. Right, and yeah, and a bunch of people say, you know, oh, Paige Fletcher is too short. I mean, I guess. Let's see. Yeah, see this series doesn't seem to be very popular, but on closer inspection, the criticism seems to be from the watch the first 10 minutes, then turned off crew. I'm unsure how you can fully judge something without watching it, but that's the level of mentality here. Yeah, like there are a bunch of reviews where they say, well, I didn't write the whole thing. Well, then don't review it. If you watch one episode and you only want to talk about that episode, there's a separate. I'm fairly certain there is for this, as there is for a bunch like full TV series. You can review individual episodes on IMDb, so just do that. You know, don't like. Let's see. I'm sorry, almost, I don't remember very much at all of them talking about the satire, which is one of the most important parts of RoboCop. Even if you don't like it, at least talk about it. Don't just whine about the production value. And let's see. Now, let's excuse me. And let's see. See, just why even, like, did none of these people read any other review and just so many of them say the same thing? At least some of them say it in a funny way, but just, let's see. Yeah, I'm not sure there's any of this that I'm gonna read out or comment on. Yeah. Okay, this guy says it's 8 hours. I don't know what channel you're watching that where you get 2 full hours of ads on a 6 hour TV series, miniseries, but yeah, very likely he's exaggerating, which, like, some people are going to read that and say, oh, I can't spend 8 hours. If it was 6 hours, maybe. And let's see. And those were all of the, yeah. I don't know that I have anything specific left to really say. Yeah, I'm not defending every aspect of the show, but I do think that the bad aspects, I don't think they're that difficult to overlook, and I think that the good aspects, you know, I feel like if you, hypothetically, if you watched up to this point and you haven't watched any of the show yet, I feel like if you watch the first one, if you devote 90 minutes of time, which I mean I can understand, like if you're standing and looking at, and you would have to buy all 6 hours, you'll want to know if it's good or not. But you know, other than that, or maybe you can maybe you can give it to someone else or something. But anyway, if you watch the first 90 minutes, if you don't think that within that there is enough to, I don't know, I mean, I guess it does get better as it goes along, though. I'm not sure I would say the first episode is the best, or the best representation. I think it's a good start. I think that the flashbacks, if they had come much later, would have been too late. The first it's about establishing Cable, so that once he's RoboCable, we have a grip on who, what his personality is, since that's still in there. But now he's being given orders by people he doesn't want to be working for and such. I mean, yeah. Ultimately, if maybe watch the first two. If by the end of the second episode, if you still haven't seen anything where you're like, that was at least interesting, I would like to see more of that. If nothing at all has been like that for you, then yeah, I'm not sure there's. Well, let me think. Does the second one introduce the invisibility and the, maybe, I don't know. I mean, I guess, yeah. I guess ultimately it's not really. If you don't watch the entire thing, it's hard to say if it's. But yeah, there are definitely bad aspects to it. But like, I tend not to be very good at looking past something that's very obviously not high quality. And with this, I had no problem. Like, I have a hard. There's a lot I hate about the second and third movie. I remember, like, there's so much about, like, the first movie is in part this commentary on, like, this, like, the city has almost become like a war zone. Like, there are, some of the violence committed by the villains in the first movie is, like, this is horrifying. And so you can understand why they bring in this, you know hypothetically, if they had, in the first movie, if RoboCop had like a taser, he would still be able to, a bunch of the time he's working against people who he could be, like, I mean, it would have to be like a fairly long distance taser, but he doesn't have to be going around gunning them down. And it's a movie that, it's like with Starship Troopers, these are the kinds of, the Paul Verhoeven action movie, excuse me, he likes to ask the question: Is is it is it should we be facing down, like a high level of violence? Should we be facing that with an equally high amount of violence? Is that actually going to solve problems? and you know, this kind of thing. And then the second movie is about, oh, you know, there's this drug baron, and he's dying for a fix, so they think they can control him, but you can't trust he's like a junkie. You can't trust junkies. And it's just, are you freaking kidding me? You had something so amazing with the first one, and then all you can think of to do with the second one is like one long anti-drug PSA. Like, seriously, it's just such a complete waste. And they started out with something so golden, and they completely botched it. Just, if the second movie had been much better, maybe the third movie would have been a lot better as well. But once you've watched the entirety of the second movie, it's like, I'm not sure we're gonna be able to recover from this. These are all going to be bad, which is part of why I'm so glad that this ignores the second one. And again, I'm not saying that this is better in every respect, better than the second movie, but at least it's not just about freaking drugs. They came up with something more interesting to base it around, just, and that's the thing. I don't see a single, I I don't think I saw a single negative review of this point out that at least it's not just about freaking drugs like the second one. Like, there were a freaking million movies coming out in the 80s whining about how awful drugs were, when really the the reason drugs are much of a problem, like today, a big issue is also the overprescription of opioids. But in the 80s, it was because it was illegal. And so there were a bunch of people. Of course, there's going to be violence when they're fighting around something that is both illegal and extremely profitable. There are a lot of people who work within yeah, who sell drugs or traffic drugs or the like, who, if you gave them an honest job and paid them so that they could survive, they choose the honest job. Very few people are actually interested in risking violence for, just, it's so frustrating. And yeah, just, anyway, I think that is everything about this. So I am, yeah. Again, if you haven't watched, if you somehow made it to the end of this video without watching, I think that there are things in this that make it worth watching all the way through. And ultimately, it is, your mileage may vary. If you really can't stand the negatives of this, yeah, you're not going to be able to enjoy it. I completely understand and respect that. I'm just saying, I don't think we needed 100 different people all writing that basic same thing. At least some of them are clever. At least some of them have really good writing style to them. But a bunch of it is just, he's short, he moves funny. Just like the one I read aloud. That's, where the Rock'em Sock'em robots and all this stuff. That's kind of funny. In addition to, I don't agree with every word of it. And again, I don't really understand. Anyway, and there was this other one who said that he thought that RoboCop shut down too frequently, and that when he gets shot, he jumps like he's having an epileptic fit. That's a good, that's a very clear, concise explanation of the issue, and it is, like, I understand. I don't think that he gets shut down too much, but I don't know. I mean, the jumping, you're supposed to see that it's impacting him. I don't know how else you would show that, but anyway, it's clear, and it sort of paints a picture. You can read that and understand what it is without it just. But you know, I don't understand how you read dozens of other people saying he's too short to play RoboCop, and then decide to just write that as well. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed watching as I enjoyed watching and recording, and I'll catch you next time.